Join me now for this edition of the Knicks Film School pregame show that also is going to work as a crossover here on the Blue Wire Podcast Network. When he is not wearing a Yankee hat and staring right at me, forcing me to combat it, which actually works because when he's also not arguing with Knicks fans on Twitter and talking about big market bias, he is covering the New Orleans Pelicans for what's the name of the blog again? I'm blanking on it. What's it called?
So Boot Crew Media is our network. So
That's
we
right.
were Blue Wire. Shouldn't never Blue Wire up until about a year ago or one season.
Well, also the In the Know podcast and New Orleans. He is Mason Ginsberg. Mason, it's always great to see you, man, even with the Yankee hat on.
I thought it would be endearing to a degree for doing the Knicks crossover. I forgot that you're a Mets guy. So, the backstory is my dad grew up in New York. He was spent the first 13 years of his life there. So I was raised on Yankees baseball, a little bit of Rangers hockey, Knicks basketball, actually, before the Pelicans came to New Orleans, the Hornets. So I'm definitely a New York guy from my childhood. Because the Saints, obviously, but that's all we had when I was a kid was the Saints. The Hornets didn't show up till I was 14. So, something like that.
Well, anyway. What I will say is you're not the first person that I've met in my life that was raised a Yankee fan, and then somehow, regardless of where you were in the country, and then now it's stuck with you. So. I will tolerate it for this episode, especially since we're not going to talk about baseball on this show. I like to give
I've met a lot of people who are just Yankees fans. For the same reason people are Lakers fans and Cowboys fans. Like I actually got family reasons for it.
Exactly. But the Knicks, it's weird. The Knicks actually do fall somewhat under that category, except the front runner aspect. Just the fact that there are millions of Knicks fans everywhere for no reason,
Cowboys are the same way. Cowboys have been trash for the last 2 decades. So,
at this point, you're right. Yes. But again, we will keep this. We will keep football out. We will keep baseball out. Let's talk about our basketball teams.
Let's do it.
I'm sure that there will be a Zion Williamson conversation that you're so excited to have with the New Yorker, who, listen, I have not put him in any trade scenarios. I have not put him in any fake trades on Trade Machine. I will just say that. Before we get into all of that, I'm sure what a lot of people are going to want to hear us talk about, I should say, 30-30. And this is after a start to the season that really looked promising, that looked like a chance of potentially even some title contention. I was super impressed. We actually have a running bit here at Knicks Film School where they're my Pelicans. I keep talking about last season's playoff run and how that's the example of the play-in working, where you get in, you win a couple games, you have an impressive first round matchup in a losing effort, and then you go into the offseason with that kind of momentum where it's not the worst thing to be in the middle, especially when you're a young team looking to take a leap. And I thought that that's what the Pelicans were doing. How do you feel with what's happened? Obviously, the Zion injury had a lot to do with the downturn and the fact that they're 30-30, but is there still the version of that team that you see that can be a contender in the West?
Yeah, I mean, I think folks, do I think that ship has sailed for this season? Look, the Kevin Durant trade doesn't help matters, right? Mm-hmm. There's a new contender in the West, and but yeah, it's. I mean, they were trending that way. People were talking about this team back in December as a team, based on all the data points you saw about how they've been performing against. They took care of business against bad teams. They held their own against good teams. They were. I joked when my 7-week-old daughter was born, the Pelicans were number 1 seed in the West. They were tied for first. Things have gone downhill from there. But I mean, the Zion injury obviously hurt. There was a period they were without BI and Zion, and they lost. They had a huge losing streak, and so it's every year with this team that the injuries seem to be what derails them. And so I think the maddening part, we can get into this, is really how different, at least recently, the results have been from the second half of last season to the game Zion's been out. And so, because the team is, one of the things that the Pelicans were excited about was the continuity of the team from last season. The only guy, they lost Tony Snell. They added Dyson Daniels in the draft. That was it. That was the change. And so, you would hope that even without Zion, you continue that momentum. And he was playing for a lot of the year, but now that they don't have him, the team has not been the same. I mean, the players on the floor have been the same, but the team has not been. And so that's been the frustrating part, at least lately.
So I guess we just have the Zion conversation now, because that's
sure.
Well, I'm sure you're excited again that's probably the number one thing that's being talked about in New Orleans right now, as far as like, what is he and how concerned are you? And I mean, I'll just flatly ask, like, how concerned are you that A, that he'll get back on the floor this season, B, that this will not be a continuous issue for the remainder of his career, and I guess C, like, and not that there's buyer's remorse to the extension, because it was a no-brainer extension to give to him, but like, how are the vibes right now around the Pelicans being built around this player?
Yeah, no regrets in the extension at all or anything. Like the team was like, he's a transformational talent, and I think the challenge really stems from having your best two players who are missing a lot of games, and like I'm not to blame Ingram for Zion's injuries, but like having two guys like that who, Ingram missed a ton of time with his toe injury. And so, Zion, I think the one thing I will say is that this isn't like a chronic knee or foot injury. It's a hamstring injury, and these happen to everyone. And setback, and he did have a setback a couple weeks ago, and reading up on it, listening to medical experts, a hamstring injury is one of the most common ones you can re-aggravate and have setback on. And so, it is a concern year in, year out with Zion. It's going to be just with the body type he has. I'm not worried about this being a chronic issue once it gets right. I think everyone expects him to be back for the playoffs, ideally before. I think what our hope is, and internally, and not sure what the team really expects, but if they can get like 2 weeks before the end of the season, where they get him back involved before the playoffs, and the play in, honestly, at this point with the way that they're tracking, that's what you can hope for. But it is, given the way this team the season started, the first 2.5 months of the year, where the team was mostly healthy, even without Ingram, with Zion in the lineup, they were mashing people, and so it is tough because what this team can be, but you haven't really seen it consistently on the floor, which predates Zion, honestly. Like, that's what happened back with the last iteration of the Pelicans with Drew Holiday and Anthony Davis. I mean, you just never saw that full team together for long stretches.
You said something before that everyone expects. Is that the fan base, or is that the team, like the front office? That, like, is the fan base, like, do they share that sentiment that he's going to come back? And I guess as a result, has there been any whispers from what you've heard, or I guess around the team and some of the reporting, that there is some like doubt in his ability to stay healthy?
No. I mean, like, this is I think that the expectation here is that he's going to be back for the playoffs, and even before that. You never know. Obviously, there could be another setback, but again, this is not like this isn't a ligament in his knee or a foot injury for a guy who carries a lot of weight. It's a hamstring, and you just got to be careful. You got to be delicate with it. But I don't hear any long-term concerns at all about where Zion's at with this. So
I wanted to fully stress the fact that it's solely the injury that I have when it comes to doubts with him, because like, you just look at the lineup data and where he was when he got hurt, and like, I'm staring at it right now. The guy is plus 24 in his minutes this year, which is the 93rd percentile. That's like, it's not Jokic numbers, but it's like Jokic for a month numbers, So there was first or second team All NBA trajectory for him. It's why, like, I understood when he was voted in as the starter for the All-Star game, even if it was like knowing he wasn't going to play. Now, I will say, I do have a ton of concerns about the injuries, and it's why I wanted to talk to you, because while it is just a hamstring, and like, that is an injury that has setback, this is another lower body injury. But that's like, if we're just like turning injuries off in 2K, I have no doubt that this guy, as a player, like, the talent is top 5, top 10 in the league. And so I can understand, like, it's not the same thing with what the Knicks went through with Porzingis, where they didn't have the trust that he would stay healthy, and they were kind of proven right in that sense when they traded him in 2019 before the extension kicked in. But I can understand if there was a frustration amongst the fan base, which it sounds like there isn't. As far as the Western Conference is concerned, though, Mason, like we talk about how far they've fallen, and after the losing streak, and they're 30-30 and 8th in the West, they are 2 games in the loss column behind the 4 seed. How has it been? We have something different over in the East, but in the West, where like a 3-game winning streak, you're back in 4th, and 3-game losing streak, you're in 13th. How has that been this season?
I mean, look, here's the thing. It's cool to look at and say, oh, you're so close, but at the same time, the stuff that happened at the trade deadline, so you've got Memphis and Denver reasonably far ahead of the pack. Memphis has kind of fallen off a little bit, but it feels like they're not going to fall out of the top 4. So maybe Denver, I think, may carry us through as the 1 seed, but Memphis, maybe they fall a little bit, but I don't think they're falling out of a home first round playoff series. Then you've got Phoenix, who's going to get Kevin Durant back. I don't think there's anyone that's disillusioned enough to think they're going to outpace the Suns with KD, as long as they get him back pretty soon. And it sounds like they're going to. Mm-hmm. Then you have the Clippers, who have been playing like a really good team with their stars healthy. And then you've also got this wild card of Dallas. Who the hell knows what's going to happen with Luka and Kyrie. I think that defense could be one of the worst defenses we've ever seen, but they're also going to be able to score on anybody. And so that's a total wild card to me. But like, that's the thing is, they're close to the 3 or 4 seed, but there's so many teams they'd have to jump to get there. I don't even view it as a realistic possibility without Zion. With Zion healthy, sure, I think it could happen, but I'm just not there. And so it's just, the question is, can you avoid the play-in? And I don't know. Like, I don't see it. Like, I just think that, again, there are too many teams and based on the way they've been playing basketball recently without Zion, I think that's kind of the important thing that underscores everything here is they can't score. They have a bunch of good offensive players even without Zion, and they can't score the damn ball. So there's so much negative, energy working against them right now that, I think they should get into the play-in. But whether or not they can do anything beyond that really just depends on when you can get your best player back.
Is that the goal in your minds, or at least what you personally need to see is get out of the play-in? Like, I'm not saying like advanced out of the play-in. I'm saying like, is there a seed in mind that you feel they need to get to make this playoff run have a chance to be somewhat successful?
I don't know. It's hard to say. Like, I don't see any, like, of those teams that could be the top 4 seeds. Like, I guess with a fully healthy team, you can make an argument the Pelicans can play with anyone, but because that they did play with anyone before Zion went down, but also, like, they're not going to beat I don't see them beating the Suns in a playoff series. Denver, you may, like, with everyone healthy, maybe you could make the argument. Memphis, if you get Jaren Jackson to foul trouble, which is, maybe that's a argument you can make. But again, like, even if you get out of whether or not you get out of the play-in, like, the top 4 seeds in the West, assuming they are Denver, Memphis, the Suns and the Clippers, there's no easy outs there. And so I don't know, like, it would be great to be out of the play-in, but you're still in a tough spot in the 5 or 6 seed. I mean, I mean, it's similar to the Eastern Conference. Like, top 4 seeds are pretty damn good teams.
Yes, that's the Knicks have I'll say there are Knicks fans. I may be one of them at times, depending on how the most recent game has just went, where I think we can match up well against anybody. And like, they have a recent win against the Celtics. They have a recent win against the Sixers. They have a recent win against the Cavs and the recent win against the Heat. So it's like one of these things where, especially after the Josh Hart trade, a player you are familiar with after his time in New Orleans, he's just like lit a fire under the second unit and what things could be. So there's like 5th seed aspirations with the Knicks right now, while recognizing there potentially could be a drop off after the top 4, with the Nets no longer part of that cluster at the top of the East. I guess if I were to ask you, like, can we just do the exercise of going 1 through however many until we get to where you see a healthy Pelicans lining up? So you'd go Denver 1.
Yeah. As far as, so are we doing like standings or like actually how good the teams are?
Yeah, like teams you would put ahead of the Pelicans if you're just going by health wise. Like, basically, what I'm trying to figure out is, in your head, who are the teams you're most afraid of come playoff time? That, like, I know you said like the other teams would probably be favored in said matchup, but are coming from a delusional Knicks fan that like would have like certain rankings of like, oh, I'm afraid of them, not as much as I'm afraid of them, or as not as much if as I'm afraid of them. So if you went Denver 1, how far down before you get to, you know what? Then you got the Pelicans.
Team. So Denver, I've got over the Pelicans, the Suns. See, I'm not even sure on neutral site, 7-game series, fully healthy Grizzlies versus Pelicans. I'm not sure I even take Memphis. I mean, I think they were playing. I think they were really close up until the injury for Zion. But I mean, Memphis has been able to stay healthier. So if we're turning that off, then I think there's an argument. I think the other two teams that would really make me nervous are the Clippers and the Warriors. So I mean, the Warriors have the same problem as the Pelicans; they can't stay healthy. But really, it's Denver, it's Phoenix, it's the Clippers, it's the Warriors, and then I'm probably taking the Pelicans at full strength over every single other team in the equation. Yeah. So, I mean, it's totally, even with the Clippers, I mean, they're just chronically unhealthy too. So, it's a, pie in the sky type thing. But yeah, I mean, the Pelicans were, they were playing with the best of them before, the wheels fall off the bus with the Zion injury.
I have a take to unleash on you. I don't think this is the Warriors' year. I've been off the bus on them. I think we forget 2 years ago they didn't even make the play-in, and the year before they won like 15 games in a pandemic-shortened season. Yes, last year they won the title, and I understand what that top 5 lineup looks like, especially when Steph is healthy. I just, at a certain point, you are what you are, and while I recognize that like the lineup data with Steph is great, they also were 20-18 with Steph. So it's not like they were like world beaters. And I'd like to see the winning streak or the thing that gets them over 500 consistently. And it hasn't happened yet,
I'm with you. Yeah. I've got there's almost like there's Denver, there's Phoenix, and then there's the Clippers. I think they're the top 3. And then there's Memphis, Golden State, New Orleans. I have in that second tier again, as fully healthy. So sorry, Dallas. I think your defense is too shitty.
I'm kind of with you on Dallas. There's going to be a lot of first to 130 in their schedule. Now I will say they have the easiest schedule remaining. So I don't know. And look, I don't want to turn this into that conversation, but there is will they be on the court question for one of their best players that. I lived through it in New York where it was like, oh, he's playing today. Oh, no, he's not playing today. It's a home game, or Amazon released the movie. I don't know whether or not you can count on him to play the rest of the season. Now, I do think my guess is he's motivated to get a max and he will prove a point and play. There is a will that similar, not to the same reasoning of if they're on the court with the Pelicans, with the Mavericks, but I cannot guarantee that they will have their full roster available for the most important games of the season in Dallas. So it's interesting to see how your playoff race is different from the Knicks specifically. As far as the Pelicans season has gone outside of Zion, I love this kid Alvarado. I do think some Knicks fans that haven't watched a lot of the Pelicans are going to be interested to see how he looks, because he had that big game or that really good game at New York last year. And then the only other times I feel like Knicks fans that don't watch the Pelicans saw him was with that sneak play where he hides on the bench and then comes and steals the ball. Tell Knicks fans. Some of
the Rising Stars game.
Yeah,
at least.
Yeah. Well, okay. If they watch the Rising Stars game,
fair.
Saw the ratings. Shout out Quentin Grimes for the Rising Stars game, by the way.
Fair.
Yeah. So tell Knicks fans a little bit about this young player who I'm sure Pelicans fans are excited about.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about Josh Hart a similar way, and I'm fully with you. We love Josh Hart in New Orleans. Mm-hmm. We make that trade for CJ every time just because of the credibility it gives the organization and that kind of the theoretical ability to withstand some injuries to the best players. That's kind of what CJ gives you. But Josh was awesome. I mean, he's instant energy, he's instant rebounding support, which was something the Pelicans are struggling at this year. But for Jose, I mean, that's it. He comes on the court and he's going to be up in your face and doing whatever he can to make winning plays. So the Pelicans sometimes can go spurts without a true point guard. CJ and BI are good creators. They're not true ones, and they don't. I'm not saying the Pelicans, especially with Zion healthy, need that. I don't really think they do. but Jose does give them that guy who can kind of run the offense. And I like his change of pace style on offense. He's not the fastest guy, but he's cracked and get around you. It's like Chris Paul in a way. He's nowhere near the shooter Chris Paul is. That's, I think yes, I can shoot. He can, but he's not, he's not going to, consistently burn you from deep. But I think that's really where he's been the guy that's maybe most pleasantly surprised me. I was on podcasts last offseason wondering whether or not he was just kind of a flash in the pan, a gimmick kind of player, and was he going to be able to sustain that success? And he has. The shooting's tailed off a little bit recently, but overall, he's been a guy who makes winning plays, and he's a great second unit point guard for this team. Now that they've traded Devontae Graham, I think it helps his viability because you're not stuck playing two undersized guards together as much. So he and CJ are kind of the small guys, and you don't really see those guys playing much together. And now if Jose is your one smaller guard with other players that are bigger, you can do more. And so it's been fun to watch him play.
I got to correct myself, by the way. I said earlier that Zion was plus 24 for the season. That's the expected wins stat, which, by the way, is still nuts. But he's plus 9, but basically plus 10, 9.9 for the season. Right below him, Jose Alvarado in almost 1,300 minutes is plus 5.9 this season on the court. The Knicks have a couple of players like that with Emmanuel Quickley and obviously now Josh Hart. Quickley, I think, is a little bit better of a shooter and runs the offense a little bit more, but those high energy guys that lead to winning basketball, that it's interesting to see when listen, he's one of the guys I'm paying attention to, especially if since Zion's not going to play in this matchup, that could tilt the game either way. So before I let you go, because this is a crossover, it's not necessarily I want to give you the floor with questions about the Knicks, but in your wildest dreams, when Julius Randle left New Orleans 4 years ago, did you foresee two-time All-Star, one-time All-NBA? I mean, we'll see how the voting goes this year. A Most Improved Player award, how do you predict that? But more specifically, 8 3-point attempts per game. And we did a draft recently, a points, rebounds, assists draft to accumulate who will get the most for the rest of the season. You know who's third in the NBA in total points, rebounds, and assists right now? Julius Randle, behind Jason Tatum and Luka Doncic. He has more than Jokic this season. Now that probably changed last night after Jokic went for another triple-double. But how have you received watching the I don't want to say renaissance, because we've had our ups and our downs with Julius over the last couple of years, but watching him become this player?
Yeah, so that was the interesting thing. It was like, I feel like this has been such a roller coaster with Julius Randle, because I feel like last year there were some Knicks fans ready to just
ham sandwich,
ship his ass out to whatever team would take his contract. So
yep, ham sandwich, ready to trade him for whatever, you name it. And boy, were we wrong, because this version of the player existed, and that's a credit to him for picking up the correct shot diet, switching his game up so he's much more aggressive, not just going downhill, but getting to the shooting the three. The guy attempts more 3-pointers a game than a lot of players, that like more than Jason Tatum per game, I'm pretty sure, at least for 36. Well, that also helps the Knicks. He only plays 36 minutes, but I digress. Continue.
No, so I'm curious. So how do teams? I mean, from the Knicks games I've watched this year, like are teams? Do they actually care when he spots up? Like, does he create spacing? Because the results are not terribly good, right? Like, he's had one really good 3-point shooting year in his career, and the rest have been pretty average. And so I guess this is kind of the Miles Turner debate too. We've talked about him so many times, because everyone's like, oh, Miles Turner would be great for the Pelicans because, he's a good shot blocking rim protector and he can space floor. I was like, no, he can't space the floor. Like, this year is different. This year he actually has been pretty damn good from 3-point range. But before this year, I mean, he's taking shots, but he's making them at like a average clip at best. And so like, I'm not going to care about Miles Turner spotting up if I've got Zion coming at me, right? So like, the question is, are these guys really floor spacers? And so that's the interesting thing with Randle, is he's just shooting at so many that I guess defenses just say, yeah, okay, I guess I got to pay attention to this guy. And so, I mean, do you find that consistently defenses are respecting his 3-point shot, or is it just kind of certain defenses will let him chuck and other defenses will care?
So here's what you're going to see tomorrow night. He, I think, leads the NBA in 3-point attempts in the first quarter. He sees if he's got it going very early on. And like he's got a couple of 5 3-point first quarters this season. And then that leads to, all right, I guess we're honoring Julius Randle. And then he's going off that night because he's either the gravity of him getting people to honor the 3-point shot lets him get downhill a lot easier and to the rim, or they just keep letting him shoot. There's an 8 3-pointer game that he has against the Timberwolves earlier this year where they were just like, keep letting him shoot. And they just never made the adjustment. So I would say he's not necessarily, like you said, he's not a floor spacer at this point, but he's good enough where you have to honor it, that he spaces the floor enough. The Knicks are not a team that, although lately they actually have been a team that relies heavily on the 3-point shot, but they're more of a team that's looking to get to the paint as quickly as possible and either take the first floater available or take advantage of offensive rebounding, or they're looking to kick out to whoever is in the corner, whether it be Quentin Grimes or RJ Barrett or Jalen Brunson or Julius Randle, whoever it might be. He's enough of a spacer that they have to honor it. The player I was thinking of was Luka. He's taking more threes a game than Luka on the exact same efficiency this season. So that's where the commitment to being like, listen, we know you're not going to shoot 41% from three again.
Yeah.
We'll settle for 34, but you're taking 8 attempts. So the volume is there at least. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's the style that makes me nervous on the Pelican side is that rim or that attacking the rim mentality, because the Pelicans haven't been great at stop. Jonas has taken a step back this year. I feel like the Pelicans are still underutilizing him, candidly, but he hasn't been quite the same guy he was last season. He's never been a great rim protector, but this year he's been particularly terrible. His defense overall, he's been a decent, an average to above average team defender, but he's never been a good rim protector. And so that's somewhere the Knicks can have some success. I'm curious to see what the Pelicans do against Julius Randle, if that's the Herb Jones assignment, because Herb also has taken a step back offensively. I think part of that is because of poor offensive design. He's just been camping out in the corner, and he's a 30% 3-point shooter, and no one's going to care. And so they got to get him moving a little bit more. But I think on the defensive side, he's still the same guy. He's going to cause problems. And so I think that it could be an interesting matchup for Herb on Randle. And I can already see the smoke coming out of people's heads if they call a silly foul or two on him that maybe is kind of borderline and gets him in trouble. I am curious if Dyson Daniels plays. That's probably a name that isn't going to really jump off the page for Knicks fans, but he was the first round pick. The Pelicans took him with the Lakers pick they had last year. He's been good for them. I mean, he's not tying up box score stats, but he's had an ankle injury. He's been out for a month. He's questionable for the next game. He's been another really strong defender who is more of a traditional point guard than Herb Jones is more of a wing. And so I'd like, the ability the Pelicans have to throw good wing defenders at teams. And so I think that's one thing they will have going for them. They have Najee Marshall, they have Herb, they have hopefully Dyson Daniels, all to throw at good perimeter players on opposing teams. Again, I'm more concerned with the Pelicans offense because it just has been a slog over the last few weeks. The Pelicans have not been able to score consistently. It's been a lot of isolation ball with CJ or BI. And again, I don't think that's their fault. I think that, again, this is kind of comes down to more oversimplistic offensive, structure. And so they're not using Jonas the same way they used him last season. And making him more of a guy they can dump the ball into and kind of create some inside outlooks. And so a lot of concerns I have right now. The Knicks are catching the Pelicans, I think, at a decent time, just because they really haven't been playing their best basketball. And seeing, I was tweeting about these stats this morning, are that the CJ Ingram, Herb Jones, Jonas Valanciunas combo last year without Zion, so after the CJ trade, they were elite. That lineup was blitzing teams. A lot of bad teams, but still, they were playing very well. And even when they put Trey in that lineup and took out Jackson Hayes against the Phoenix Suns in the playoffs, they had pretty good results. This year's been the total opposite. They've been terrible. And there's not really an easy way to the difference is so staggering that there's no easy way you can't point to one thing and say, this is why this is happening. And so you just hope that they can turn it around. Because if they don't, the plan is going to be out of reach. Like all it takes is the Lakers made some great moves at the deadline. All it takes is them continuing to ride that momentum, and having AD and LeBron stay healthy. Some team's going to fall out. Is it the Thunder? Could be. Is it the Warriors if Steph can't get healthy? Sure, but also could be the Pelicans. And so, not to say the Lakers are a lock for the play-in. They've still got work to do. But New Orleans needs to be worried about this.
I will say, look, I hear you on the concerns and the things that need to be cleaned up. Watching what happened last night in Portland, I think I know one of the teams that is going to commit to falling out of said playoff race. 8 days off for Dame and Jeremy Grant, and all of a sudden they're out for the first game with rest.
Well, there was travel concerns there, right? Like
they sat on the tarmac in first class. I don't want to hear it. I'm sorry. I don't want to hear it. You are a professional. I don't. Especially since I'm from Knicks land with Thibodeau and how like we're playing our guys up 30 against the Pistons, where I'm so trained to be like every possession matters, and Dame is taking like an extra day of vacation. I'm not there. I'm sorry. I'm just not. So. Although the science might actually be in their favor. Believe me, I get it. I just also don't think it has anything to do with science. It's more to do with ping pong balls. That's just my philosophy toward it, at least. Well, I think Utah's the other team they could potentially move that direction too.
Yeah, as you can tell, just generally speaking, things are not. The vibes were immaculate or in December for Pelicans world. The vibes are not good right now. And so it's obviously heavily correlated to Zion's injury, but still, I mean, I think there's still, even when you pull that out of the equation, there's some general frustration about how the team is functioning, despite having the exact same team they had to close out last season.
So let me follow up on that. The frustration with the dysfunction, how much of that, I guess, do you, and I guess more specifically the fan base, is they putting that on Willie Green?
It's a fair question. And I will say that it's unfair to put all of this on. I don't like when it's on Willie Green. I'm happy to put it on the coaching staff. I think Willie Green, I still can't say enough good things about the way he gets his players to rally behind him. Like, I mean, the run they made last year after the CJ trade, like, he's a great motivator of people. The players love him. And that's so important as someone who watched Stan Van Gundy coach this team right before. the difference is staggering. Mm-hmm. That said, it does seem like the coaching staff has fallen short here on ways to make this offense functional. Like, if you a team with CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, and Jonas Valanciunas with one of the best shooters in the league, Trey Murphy, flanking, like, there's no reason that offense should be bottom of the league. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. And so I don't fault people for wanting to blame the coaching staff, at least to a degree. And so I think that's fair. I caution at the Willie Green. I think it's the whole coaching staff is responsible for the game plan. But yeah, it's fair.
No, I just, more of curiosity. I don't know if you'd be surprised by it, because I think this is just the nature of every fan base and their relationship they have to the coach of their basketball team. But there's been a civil war amongst Knicks fans about how good the Knicks are because of Tibbs, how much they're being held back because of Tibbs, how much credit you give him for the sixth best offensive rating, or whether they'd be even better if they had an offense that relied less on isolation and more on ball movement and pick and roll. I fall somewhere in the middle, where it's like I went through Derek Fisher and Jeff Hornacek and David Fizdale and a lot of the horrors of the mid 2000s and 2010s that I'm kind of just.
That's right when I got off that's right when I got the Hornets in New Orleans too. So I think I was able to jump ship at the right time.
You're good call, first of all, and like the Titanic kept sinking, Mason. I'll tell you, and now it's finally like taking a step back toward the surface. So I think that's just the nature when it comes to fan bases and how the relationship they have to their basketball team is when things aren't either when they go wrong or aren't what they want them to be, you point to the person in charge. And I think from my perspective, the reasonable take with the Pelicans is like they lost their best player, and when they had him, they were outstanding. So I'm curious to see, again, I'm very curious to see what the Pelicans look like when he gets back. And, if there is kind of another playoff run that they can make. Last thing before I let you go, I do want to give you the floor as far as how you feel the Knicks are doing. I like to get the perspective from other people. And look, let's not dance around it. You have had some takes in the past on the good old twitter.com about the New York Knicks and the market that they play in. But just from your perspective, how have the Knicks done this season and the direction that the franchise is headed?
Yeah, I mean, those takes were I think all about the Zion, all the Zion stuff, and like it got obviously for New Orleans, it got a little nauseating, and it wasn't really driven by the Knicks or Knicks fans specifically, but it was just kind of like I think there is a market bias that plays into it. But I think as far as the team and the trajectory, I mean, I think I feel like I've been pleasantly surprised with how good Brunson's been. I don't think I don't think I ever thought that was a bad contract, but I was like, it's a good, the deal makes sense, but I didn't think he'd be as good as he's been. And so Brunson being that good is awesome. I love it because I'm personally like very happy about it because of what it means for the Mavericks. As a divisional opponent with seeing what they had to do to go, like they basically after all said and done, they replaced Brunson with a more talented but more volatile version of Brunson. Like I think that's fair to say. And like I caught some heat from with Kyrie stands on Twitter for saying something like that about how good Kyrie is at his best. I'm like, sure, but can you trust him? And like I feel like the Mavericks have to expend so many assets to just replace the mess up they made by not keeping Brunson in the first place. And so, cool to see that. I'll always be a Josh Hart fan, so I'm rooting for him in New York, and he's going to be great for you guys as he's already been. And so, look, I mean, I think I think the trajectory has been solid. I think the question for the Knicks in the future is like you've got to find that guy to put it all together, because I don't think. I would assume you'd agree that Julius Randle is not the number one on a title team.
So it's funny you asked that, because it's not that you're right. Of course, I don't assume that. It's that, and look, maybe this just isn't possible in today's NBA. That's kind of like you need not just a star, but a collection of stars. But like Josh Hart has been getting comparisons, and this is like a very inside baseball reference, to Dave DeBusschere, a guy the Knicks traded for in the late 60s. And he just made, like, he was the 6th or 7th guy that made a championship team click all of a sudden. They end up beating the Lakers and winning 2 titles with DeBusschere. Anyway, like, there's other comparisons being made to, like, maybe Josh Hart is Rasheed Wallace going to the 04 Pistons. I'm not there with Josh Hart. I'm wondering if the move is less about, like, you need to trade Randall for Embiid or star X. And it's like, could you trade, like, RJ in the right package for Anunoby, and then it's more of a style fit. I'm not even sure I want to trade RJ Barrett. Like, there's still an untapped ceiling I personally want to find out about. But I guess it's way more about, because this team is young and all of these, like, they don't have a max contract on their roster, and they have all of these assets and picks. So clearly the other guy is coming. But like, to fully answer your question, I don't think Randall or Brunson is the best player on a championship team, but like, do they need to go get the first guy like they thought they needed to with Mitchell, or do they need to get like another second guy to fully complement that? And then just like the style ends up working because they have so many people similar to Memphis, although they have Ja committing to this one style of play that could lead to multiple playoff rounds being won. Yeah, because you can make some comparisons across with both teams with. You can make the Brunson and CJ McCollum comparison. You can make the Brandon Ingram and Julius Randle comparison. And so, I think they're not the same player, but I think they're both guys are in the same tier as the other, or similar enough. And so the question comes down to, A, supporting cast, and B, who's the dude. And so I think that that is an interesting consideration. And so, can you, if you've got Julius Randle and Jalen Brunson, who are both in the prime of their careers, so it's not like you've got to worry about like a huge fall off in the next couple of years. Another reason I was just like, why would you let the 26-year-old Brunson go Mavericks and go trade for the 30-plus-year-old Kyrie Irving? But yeah, so I mean, I think that's the question of,
when it comes, like when you're in a playoff series and the defense starts to clamp down, because that's where we saw the Pelicans very quickly were outclassed by the Phoenix Suns last year with BI and with CJ, because they just didn't have the firepower to keep up. But once Booker came back later in that series, but I think that's always a question. You've got to look at this through the playoff series lens. Like, can you win 3 or 4 playoff series with this group? And I think I think the Knicks are in a good place to continue to build. And the question is, how do they build, and who do they, who's the target? So yeah, I mean, like I totally understood the drive for Mitchell, and I think I was actually of the opinion the Knicks should jettison whatever it took to go get him, because he is that kind of superstar that brings reputability to your franchise in an additional way. But that was when Randall was still that was last season's Randall, right?
Yeah.
And so now you've got the revitalized Randall from 2 years ago, who's making good decisions, and you've got Brunson, who is he as good as Donovan Mitchell? No, but he's not that far off this year with how well he's been playing, and so you've got some good pieces there. And the question now is what's the next step? And I'm very curious because it takes 2 to tango. You've got to have you've got to either have the right trade partner, or you've got to have the right free agent to go get, and so that's the hard part, right? But it's not like the Knicks are no assets to move to go get that guy, right?
If anything, they have an abundance
right.
of assets and that I think is the biggest difference between this summer and last summer. Because last summer they, like you said, they could have gone all in on Donovan Mitchell and made that trade, but I still would have so many questions about. Like, I hadn't seen Brunson play yet. I have no question. I have so many questions about Julius Randle. Look, as much as I've been happy and I guess satisfied with the job that Tibbs has done last year he was horrific as a minutes distributor, at figuring out who it needs to play when, and just leaned so heavily on the Fourniers and the Taj Gibsons and the Alec Burks of the world, when you had younger pieces that could have contributed toward winning, and we're seeing them do that this year. So I think now that their assets have taken a step up, if a Donovan Mitchell was available, you'd make a ton more sense. But I think the fear among the fan bases at the moment is that the guy will be Zach LaVine, Karl Anthony Towns, guys that have yet to prove either that they can stay on the court, or that when they're on the court, they can really lead to multiple playoff rounds of winning, which is why I think you said something. Man,
Towns and Randall frontcourt would be super interesting.
You think so?
I think that's I'm not sure how the defense holds up.
That's the thing. Randall's defense, I gotta be honest, he's actually been a decent, I say decent, so Knicks fans don't yell at me when I'm saying he's not good, decent defender this year. He's been a body this year. He hasn't been he has his plays that he takes off, but I've actually been okay, Julius is playing defense on this possession. I noticed it. He's been moving his feet more so than he has in the past. What I'm gonna give most of their credit for with how they've not somewhat hidden Randall is that Mitchell Robinson is a beast with the rim protection. So as a result, Julius just doesn't have to worry about that portion of the court, and he can focus closer to the perimeter as a result. That goes away with Karl Anthony Towns, who, as we have seen, played under Tibbs and was not as successful. Now, I'm not saying that because of Tibbs, you can't trade for Karl Anthony Towns because you get rid of the coach if it doesn't work.
But see, I think so, and that's the thing. When you get into a playoff series, is a Randall Robinson front court lineup, is it good enough? And I think teams would I wouldn't be hesitant to play a zone defense against or just.
They will. Don't worry. They will. We've been seeing a lot of zone against the Knicks lately, and then Tibbs just kind of I don't know what to do. But
Mr. Robinson's a New Orleans guy, so I'm a big fan. I just wonder if Randall's shooting is off and Mr. Robinson obviously doesn't shoot, what do you do? And so that's the give and take is that's the challenge the Pelicans have with building around Zion too, is that who is the other front court partner that really makes sense for him. And there's just he gives you a lot of luxuries and you can concede in certain areas because of how good he is. But the challenge is it is hard. It's hard to find the guy who fits next to him in the long term.
I think you said something smart in that it's
one thing. All right, I'll take it.
Okay, you said something recently smart. Yeah, I'll see if I can go back in post-production and find multiple ones. But no, just that I'm looking at it from the perspective of a regular season lens. And I think the next step for Knicks fans is to start looking at things through a playoff lens, because the playoffs aren't so delusional to think of anymore. Now look, I'd like to see them make the playoffs 2 times in a row for the first time since Carmelo Anthony was here. But I think that's the next. Well, listen, that's the next. Well, so there you get it. I think that's the next evolution of how this fan base is starting to look at this. That if they had a really disappointing showing against the Hawks 2 years ago, even though they had home court in that series, then last year happened, and this year, if you push the Cavs, the Bucks, whomever to 6 games, and like that is the test that you get, and then next year you're looking to make an even bigger step, you have the 6-game series as your lens and not what works in the regular season. And then maybe that's when they decide to make the move. Although I think I'm pretty confident in letting you know now the Knicks will make a move this summer for a guy, whether it's Cat, whether it's Levine, whether it's Anunoby, whomever it is. And I'm pretty sure I know who will be at the center of it too. And he's Zion's old college buddy, Mr. RJ Barrett. So we'll see what happens in that stretch.
Yeah,
you've been great with your time. I appreciate it. I told you 35 and we're coming up on 45 already. I really appreciate it, Mason.
Yeah.
Also, congratulations. You threw it in there. You're 7-week-old. Congratulations. And welcome to fatherhood. Before you get out of here, please tell everybody they can find you in the know and all the great stuff that you do.
Yeah. So part of Boot Crew Media. So it's a local media network in New Orleans covering all things New Orleans sports, college, pros, you name it. My co-host and I, Shamit Dua, we host the In the Know podcast, which is just our Pelicans pod, but lots of other stuff, great stuff on that on that site. So make sure to come check us out if you're interested in what Zion and the Pelicans are up to.
Awesome. Mason, as always, man, good to see you. And last question before I let you go. Who's the Saints quarterback going to be next year?
Man, I don't know. My Saints fandom has waned over the last decade. It's okay. Like since the Super Bowl win was my senior year of college. So like that was like that, and then Mardi Gras was all happening at the same time. It was like a month of my life I'll never remember, I think is probably the best way to put it. Okay. But just like it's gone downhill since then. I'll follow them when they're good, but I don't know. People seem to think that David Carr guy might be the guy. Derek Carr. No, that's right. David Carr was the Texans guy who was terrible. Yes. I see. All right, I remember that at least. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, the Saints. One thing about them is they continue to kick the can down the road with the cap stuff, and eventually the bill's going to come due, and then hopefully at that point the Pelicans and Zion are contenders, so we can forget about the Saints for a little bit. I'll
say this: I'm a Jets fan, so it's weird how this whole Aaron Rodgers going into, I don't know how much you've paid attention to this, but he went on an isolation retreat where like no electricity, no light, like it was, I'm going into darkness. And the way it was covered was like it was the Vatican and we're waiting to see smoke, because he said when he comes out, he'll decide what team he wants to play for next year, whether it's the Packers or the Jets or whomever. And I'm just like, look, I'd love to have Aaron Rodgers, the quarterback, on my football team next year as a Jets fan who had to watch Zach Wilson and 3 weeks of somewhat healthy Mike White. I also, like at a certain point, he is 40 years old and he is, kind of a lunatic. A little bit, but I've rooted for worse in the past. Thankfully, it's not a Brooklyn situation, but I was curious if you had any how Saints fans were feeling, because I know he's been not linked to the Saints, but I know Derek Carr has, and the Jets just spent like 2 hours with Derek Carr at like a nice restaurant in Jersey. So we dealt with a quarterback who was slinging like Advocare in that pyramid scheme, Drew Brees. Yes. So I don't think we need alternative medicine, Aaron Rodgers, alternative COVID solutions to help finish that off. So no thanks. There you go, Mason. Thank you, my man. Good to see you. Yeah, you too. Take care.